All right.
Yo.
We are here. Yo.
We are here.
Right. I have a silly old electronic song I did at UW called We Are Here.
Oh, I don't remember you doing that.
It was a really silly class. This was like the very first electronic music class they were trying to put together. And it was about Ableton, and the professor didn't know how to use it either, so we were all like learning it together.
Sounds productive.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It's great though that he was getting paid for that as a professor.
Well,
like we could have got paid too, but we
yeah. Everybody's learning. Yeah, that does seem like something you'd probably want to know going into the class. But that's just like my opinion, man.
Yeah, exactly.
How you doing?
I'm all right. Just got done with a long weekend of shows.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I feel like you always come with good gig stories.
Good gig
Last
stories?
week was good, yeah.
I don't know if I have great gig stories. I played a gig last night to nobody, which was those are really hard. It's like 3 hours of playing to an empty venue is just like really miserable.
Yeah. That's tough. Were you supposed to bring people, or was it?
Nah,
just like...
I mean yes, but not really. I mean it's just a bar, you know.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It was just dead, and it's nice because the bar gives us free drinks and stuff, and so like they're cool. But I feel bad even taking free drinks when they're like there's no one there. It's like, well, you guys are just losing money on us, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was what, this Sunday evening.
Yeah. I mean, I have that gig every Sunday, but
right.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's a tough. I mean, isn't that probably the toughest night?
It is a tough night. What's also really tough about it is next door there's a really, really good sounding cover band that does like really sharp covers of just awesome, like I Want to Dance with Somebody and Michael Jackson, and it's just like there's like everybody on Rainy Street is over there.
I see. So you guys
and
have
it's like
competition.
It's like I don't know. I don't think I can compete with it. And then,
not with that attitude, Antushka. You got to get up on, go. Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
You got to start dressing like the people that you're covering.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I should do a Kiss cover band and dress like them.
Yeah, that's. Who would you be?
All of them. I do. Quadrants.
Wow, quadrants of the face will be.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know. Nice. Yeah, no, sorry. I've been there. I've certainly been there. Only, though, I think they were mostly open mics. But I've played to. I mean, obviously, I've played to. Yeah, come on. Who are you talking to here? Nobody wants to listen to me play.
Yeah.
Went my career trajectory.
Yep. I also realized I need more fun. My set isn't fun enough, and so like my first hour is awesome and it's rocking, and then I have all these slow songs and stuff, which on a loud street do not work at all.
Right.
You can't play any slow songs.
Do you do any LaGrange or anything like that?
No, that'd be a good one to add.
Man.
Yeah, I need some just like classic rock bangers to add. That was not too hard.
Yeah, or like the things that I feel like when I play that always get a good, like Smashing Pumpkins stuff. I'm sure.
Oh yeah. It's stuff that I'm still getting comfortable singing, and so sometimes I'm scared of singing some of these songs.
Yeah, I hear you.
Feel like making love. Anything by Queen. I mean, there's no way.
I can only imagine. I got to hear that. I feel like making love. Feel like making. Oh, Antushka, I can just see it now, man. That's
no,
beautiful,
I don't
man.
do that song. It's not in my set.
It should be. It should be. Feel like making love to you. Oh, yeah. Good stuff.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. What are we talking about today?
So
No.
chemistry.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean,
Chemistry.
we could talk about this. I mean, do you think, because I had hesitations about whether this would be a good book, and I still kind of feel that, although I agree, what we were talking about before, that the first chapter is a little bit boring because it's like, you can see the way the book actually progresses is that it sort of does it sort of like the doctor's book where it picks somebody and then talks about them.
Yeah. Right. It seems like it was most of this chapter was just like a list of, well, they could do this and they could do this. And there was nothing really spicy.
Right. I will say I think that's kind of how most of this book is, where it's just it's a lot of facts, which is why I was wondering if you would like it.
Right.
But there, even that being said, though, there were some funny things like the Empedocles, throwing himself off into a volcano. It's like, there's some funny stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's and general like things I was thinking of, like points that we can make from it. But yeah. I don't know. So what I'm saying is, like, I won't be offended if you want to not keep doing this book.
Oh. Well, no, I like the challenge. We have to make facts fun.
Yes. My goodness. How
will
we do this?
Can
it be done?
It can. Well, if they both start with F, I think it's possible. Like, I have a rule of if it rhymes, it's true.
Alliteration.
So if it's alliterative, then we should be able to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So
we start from the beginning.
Yeah. All right. So there was like glass and dye.
Right. Well, and so
iron and copper and all these things. They just are, and then there are people using them for stuff. And we still use those things for stuff today, which is crazy.
It's indigo, blue jeans.
Yeah. That indigo thing was kind of a crazy fact, that it doesn't have color until you put it until you put it on the cloth, and then it oxidizes or whatever.
Right. Well, no, and I guess we should say, so we're talking about Creations of Fire today, which is the book by Cathy, Cobb, and Harold Goldwhite. Nice. And
of course.
Yeah, I mean, we all know them. But no, you got to give credit where credit's due, man.
Right.
We're
also,
scholars.
They have citations.
They do have citations. No, yeah. And like I said, so it's interesting for me to go back and read this because, like I said, this was one of the books that got me sort of into science. And I read it before I took, chemistry, organic chemistry, any of that stuff. So it was kind of interesting to go back and sort of at least not like read it and be like, hey, wait a minute, this is all wrong. Although there is some, I mean, obviously, so the first thing is, obviously these people haven't heard of Göbekli Tepe or anything like that. Because, they're obviously
they haven't been listening to enough Joe Rogan.
Yeah, they're walking the anthropological dogma line here, but that's okay,
But that's okay.
That's okay. Them. Yeah, so so the first chapter starts at 100,000 to 300 BCE, basically.
Right.
So prehistoric chemist to the chemical philosophers. So it basically stops with Aristotle.
Right.
And it starts in the prehistoric, what was it? It was Paleolithic, right?
So I think it's interesting. There's something kind of funny about writing about history that old. Because in a sense, doing history that's that old is really hard because there's almost no sources. However, the bar is very, very low for providing information. Like, you can say something like, they painted paintings on cave walls with charcoal, and that like done.
Right. Well, we sort of know that, I guess, because there are. Oh, I guess it could be just random people, but haven't they carbon dated?
No. What
things?
I'm saying is, like, you can say that, and like you've done ancient history now.
Oh yeah. Because they're so. You're right.
You don't need to expand much at all.
No. Yeah. No, and yeah, that's very true. No, and I mean, I think what I liked about this book when I was kind of reading it the first time, and I guess this time too, is sort of thinking about how civilization really does go hand in hand with these technological innovations that happen. Right. It's like you needed a civilization to occur. So just to give a brief outline, basically it starts by talking about a lot of the metallurgy that happened, because that was sort of some of the first chemistry that was going on, and maybe some of the most important for civilization development. And so, of course, you're going to start with like copper, and then you move to bronze, although I guess bronze is a little controversial because not everybody had a Bronze Age, and some people went straight to iron. So, but then, the interesting fact for me is like looking at it, like, why did people start with copper first? Well, it's because it was like one of the few metals that would be in a pure form.
Right, you could just find it. Yeah,
exactly, and it was malleable. You could hammer it into things. Whereas bronze is an amalgam of tin and copper, and then iron it oxidizes, so you have to sort of purify it, and then steel is an even more complicated version of iron, And
Right, because there's carbon in it or something.
Exactly, and they talk about the carbonization of iron a little bit.
Yep,
That was happening in some places like China and whatnot. But yeah, it's just interesting. Like, and another thing that was making me think about is because it was talking about how like Northern Europe sort of skipped the Bronze Age and went straight to iron. Right. And it didn't really even go into that much. And it was making me think about another book I had read that was talking about how like before the Industrial Revolution, a lot of the best iron came out of like Scandinavia and the Germanic countries. And one of the things that sort of was an impetus for England to industrialize was they had all of this crappy, basically coal and stuff that they didn't know how to like refine and use. And so by sort of coming up with all the machines to do, refinement, they were able to then become kind of a powerhouse and supplant places. And this is all coincided with the industrial age,
right,
in the 1800s or late, 1700s into the 1800s. So it's just, again, I just feel like it's interesting how we don't necessarily think about civilization on the back of technology. There are people that do it, but it's not as obvious. And I just think this was an interesting book that not only talks about technology, but some of the, basic materials, like material science is sort of what undergirds a lot of things, So anyway, yeah.
I mean, it's also, it's interesting to be focusing your history on such specific materials, like raw materials. It isn't even necessarily swords or the history of guns or boats or whatever. It's just different types of metals.
Right.
Because those can be used for a whole number of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or dyes, the history of dye.
Right. Yeah, and so I mean these are just some of the interesting facts that
I wonder when tie-dyeing started.
Well, the hippies, obviously, going back to the last episode. No, I don't know. And they're going to talk about niter a lot more, when they talk about like gunpowder and everything. But niter, which is like it's a nitrogenous compound that I think is
that where the word ignite comes from?
You're asking the wrong man here,
man. Okay.
I don't know. Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. But it's just interesting. It's a byproduct of like basically urine and bacteria on the urine that then form it into this new nitrogenous compound. And then that can be used for ignition with gunpowder and everything. So it's just interesting, again, how like a lot of these things they were the things that just happened naturally almost. And then humans just basically came up with a use for them, like fermented foods, right? It's just you leave grapes out or whatever, and yeast are in the air, and they're going to sort of go to where there's sugar, and then you'll naturally get fermentation, and then people just figured out how to utilize it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why I always kind of like these books, because I don't know. It's just there's a lot of details in this, but it's the devil is in the details.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever heard that.
It is all details. Yeah. So I've one bone to pick.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, please.
One
bone. I had a few bones. I mean, honestly, I'll let you go.
Well,
first.
I feel like you have more expertise in the area, so it's easier for you to start picking bones. I don't really have any expertise in the area. So
Sure.
I just read it and go, that's cool. That's cool.
Right.
I assume this is all right.
Yeah, I assume that they were making cave drawings about voluptuous women. I think they said that.
The big-breasted women.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think that is true, though.
There's this little prescription, physician's advice, in the section talking about chemical compounds and Sumerian physicians. I was actually just about to... Is it about the antiseptic stuff? Right. So it says, sift and knead together, all in one, turtle shell, the sprouting naga plant, which contains sodium, salt, and mustard. Wash the sick spot with quality beer and hot water. Scrub the sick spot with all of it. After scrubbing, rub with vegetable oil and cover with pulverized fear. Anyway, so there's that. It's like a prescription. And then I was getting... Well, real quick, can we just... Because we did jump to it. So we're talking about the Sumerians who were like
maybe the most ancient and most civilized. Not civil. Well, yeah, in some ways, like this. So the Sumerians had these cuneiform tablets, which are being actually still translated, and so this is where a lot of the Anunnaki sort of stuff comes from. It all comes from Sumer, ancient Sumer, which was like, what was it? It was like 3000 BCE thereabouts, or 4000 BCE, and so basically this is like one of the first really high technology civilizations that had a really good writing system that we still, can have and are trying to learn and everything. So just to put that up. So we're talking about a long time ago, and so it's very interesting because we're reading an excerpt from a Sumerian cuneiform tablet written by a physician about a prescription to basically take care of an injury, and they use an aseptic technique, as you heard Antushka say. I almost caught myself there. Talking about basically use hot water, right? So we know this. And beer, ethanol, right? Yeah. Yep. So anyway, sorry, just to lay that out.
It is interesting. So I think, first of all, reading it, it's like, oh, this is not a bad idea. I bet this works okay.
Yeah.
The mustard part, I don't really understand.
Yeah.
Turtle shell, I don't really know.
Mm-hmm. Calcium, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. But overall, it seems like a pretty decent idea. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the prescriptions in the Bible for what to do when people are sick. It's like you read it and you're like, yeah, this sounds like at least some of this would work okay.
Right.
But
so your bone? What's your bone?
My bone. All right, so the next paragraph, he says, interestingly, our Sumerian physician did not record incantations Interestingly, our Sumerian physician did not record incantations or magic rituals to be used with the medicines, indicating that rituals were either not used or not considered important enough to take up limited space on the tablet.
Yeah, I agree. He's making some assumptions there.
Well, so what I'm wondering is, how is this not sort of an incantation in itself? Maybe it's not a ritual as in everybody is practicing it in kind of a sacred way or something like that. But to me, it kind of is an incantation, and I don't know. I mean, magic is probably, it's not fair to call it magic because it probably is related to something observed. And it's sort of unclear to me what magic is, like the defying of the laws of the universe.
Anything sufficiently advanced is magic, Antushka. What's that quote everybody says all the time?
Oh, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But I don't know. It to me it does feel sort of like an incantation.
So an incantation,
just because it works. To me there's kind of an assumption or maybe a putting down of the idea that if it works or if it's observed to work, then it can't be an incantation or something, which is sort of defining magic and incantations out of usefulness sort of beforehand. It's sort of giving them the short shrift. It's not giving them the fair chance to be useful.
Well, here, I mean, I have
Yeah.
Incantation, a series of words said as a magic spell or charm.
Sure.
Right. So that's the definition.
So this is a thing done. So maybe this is a ritual.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. It's like this is different from an incantation than like, if they were saying like, whatever, tumble and tumble, boil and what's that thing that everybody
tumble, boil and rumble.
Yeah, whatever it is. If they were saying that boil and rumble. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about though.
Yeah.
Whatever the witches.
Double, toil and trouble.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. They're from the 90s with.
That I thought you were talking about the Shakespeare.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, come on. Who was influenced by who? Okay, was Shakespeare influeed by Hollywood, or was Hollywood
you're talking about what is that movie with
Charmed or something? Or no, not.
Well,
Charmed.
that was a TV show.
Yeah,
no.
I do.
Wait a minute. I know the movie you're talking about.
Bewitched.
Like Glenn.
It might be just witches. It's got this is great radio right here.
It's set in like New England, and there's a
Barbara
little girl.
Streisand. Doesn't it have Barbara Streisand or something?
Dude, it's Glenn Close.
Glenn Close.
Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Dude, I'm gonna get rid of this whole part.
Wait, no. Wait, hang on a second. But it's driving me crazy. I watched this.
Which movie from the 90s?
It's got Sarah Jessica
Hocus
Parker.
Pocus. Hocus Pocus.
That's right. I loved that movie as a kid.
Yeah.
It's got the zombie that they hang around with.
Bette Midler.
That's right.
Yeah, I knew it was a singer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways. Why do we get on this? Oh, yeah, Toil and Tumble. Yeah, so, I mean, I do sort of, I agree with what they're saying, although I thought your issue was going to be that they're making some assumptions. Because, I mean, like, you know, it could have just been like everybody knew the incantations to say, and that's why they didn't write them down or something like that. Although,
right.
but again, I feel like I will sort of, you know, I think it is an interesting point because, yeah, you had a lot of incantation come later, so it's interesting that you have this ancient society that doesn't seem to have been doing that. Although I'm sure, first off, one sort of important point that I was talking about is like there's tons of these cuneiform tablets that still haven't been translated. So for all we know, it's just, you know, maybe there are, and we just haven't.
It seems to me like if it's put on a tablet at a time like that, it's probably pretty important. So how do we know this isn't a ritual? How do we know that every time somebody's sick, they don't just do this turtle thing?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, no, and I see what your point is that like maybe some of the ingredients like mustard seed and stuff like that were just like they noticed that when they did this, it worked, and so they just kept doing that.
Right.
Is that kind of your idea?
Yeah, I mean, that feels less ritualistic. That's like just like sheer, what's it called? Empirical.
Well, but I feel like you know, this might be controversial, but I do feel like most rituals come out of some empiricism. Like there's an initial reason for doing something, and then just sort of as you repeat it, like a game of telephone, it slowly morphs into something else.
Sure.
Until the original use was, you know, kind of forgotten.
Well, some rituals are like, you know, sacrificing a goat or something. Mm-hmm. Is that like, did they do that once and they realized that it didn't thunderstorm on them or something?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, let's keep doing that.
Yeah, because I mean that's the interesting thing especially when people talk about like spirituality and stuff like that. And I'm not even trying to like be derogatory towards any of that stuff, but it's just because you know I'm a little spiritual myself, Antushka. No, but it's the idea that you know we humans are pattern recognition beings, and so we're constantly looking at correlations between things and being like, oh, well, I just did this and then this happened. And, you know, so I feel like that is something that's sort of within our framework that's very fundamental to our nature. Yeah. Which is where all this stuff comes out of, which is what I was saying is how I feel like there is a logic to every ritual. It's just, you know, whether, you know, it's been, I guess, corrupted.
Sure. I mean, I think maybe not all rituals have empiricism behind them. I remember who was I listening to? Oh, Glenn Fry. Do you know him?
The name sounds familiar.
He's
Stephen Fry.
Wait a minute, Stephen Fry.
Yeah, Glenn Stephen Fry. I know. Yeah.
Glenn Fry is from the Eagles. I'm wrong guy. Stephen Fry. Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow. Yes.
Okay, cool. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. I'm feeling good. So, yeah, this is good. I feel like last episode I was off, and now, so we could switch.
I'm not
saying you're off, though. No,
a little bit.
You seem great,
Stephen Fry. He said, like, he talked about how he is an empiricist. Mm-hmm. How he thinks it's actually more important to see if something's working, even if you don't know why it's working. And, like, a rationalist, like Ayn Rand or something like that, would actually say that that's a bad thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's more important to understand why or how than to have a result that works.
Then have a result that works. But
so Stephen Fry would say, you know, like if you do an incantation and then an infection goes away, and that works every time, even if you can't trace the mechanism as to why it's working, you should keep doing that.
Right, and Ayn Rand is saying that you shouldn't keep doing
Well,
it.
it's actually dangerous to keep doing that because you don't know the mechanism. You don't know any of the other stuff that might be happening.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, this is where I have issues with Ayn Rand's philosophies.
Right.
I mean, I have read her books, or at least, the famous ones like Atlas
Right.
Shrugged and Fountainhead. But it's just like, you're basically making all sorts of assumptions about how your body works without really thinking about it. It's like there's so many things about our own body we don't really understand, and yet we keep doing it. So anyway, but yeah, anyway, no, I mean, because I was going to bring up my own sort of experience in doing like cell culture, where you have to sort of, if you don't want to have your cultures get contaminated, you need to practice certain aseptic techniques, like washing your gloves with ethanol and cleaning the hood and stuff like that before you go in and do things. And everybody, I would say, I've been doing it long enough and seen enough people do it differently that everybody has their little quote rituals that they do to make sure. Like some people are very, very stringent about, like, once your hands are in the hood, like, and you take them out, every time you take your hands out, you should spray them with ethanol, which I kind of subscribe to too. Although, there was also a time where I didn't do that and I didn't have contamination issues. You know what I mean? So there's something to be said about going overboard just for the sake of being extra careful. But then this is what I was saying, how like then plus time you can iterate on these things and then they can slowly maybe get out of hand. And hype, which, not to get all religious, but like you could look at some religions as sort of doing this. Is like maybe a lot of the rituals started from a certain place, and then they over centuries became ornate and then forgot the initial sort of reason that they were a thing. Which might happen if I were doing cell culture for 500 years. And then I come in when I have incense before I go into the it's like,
I'd be like, what is he doing?
Yeah,
and you're like, you know what? I really don't remember.
Yeah, I found that 200 years ago, if I lit incense before I made these cultures, like I never got a contamination. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so
you could try that. I bet you haven't tried it.
Yeah, I haven't. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, like incense is a great example of like there's some religions that they have incense, and I'm sure there's a reason behind it. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be doing this, but I'm just saying it's
I'm saying you shouldn't do it. It's very bad. No,
I'm saying you need to do it if you're doing cell culture. That's the only place that incense is appropriate. Okay, no, obviously. I'm being funny here, people. It's comedic affect. Right. Yes. But yeah, no, it's an interesting point about the bone that you have to pick.
Well, I mean, really, it's just my question is what is the difference between ritual and just practice?
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably just that maybe it is that idea of like, I think there is a blur. I think there's overlap, I guess, is the point. Mm-hmm. Because I think rituals can be grounded in fact, I guess is what I was sort of making the point with the aseptic technique stuff is like, there's a ritual component to that. Is like, I do this every time, but it's also like maybe ethanoling your gloves every time you take them out of the hood isn't necessarily what you need to do. Because also like just the act of touching the ethanol bottle, then okay, so now you've contaminated your hands in a sense, right? Or whatever. Right. I don't know. Yeah, so I think for me, I think it's sort of blurred. Yeah. Yeah. That was a good discussion.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, I think we got there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and this is what I actually like, why I like doing this with you, is because I do feel like you're good at sort of getting at some, I mean, this is the academic in you. I know that you rail against academia sometimes, but you are good at sort of pulling out sort of interesting ideas, I guess you could say. Yeah.
I think that the whole that whole paragraph, because even when it goes on to talk about how when sorcerers became sort of the big wigs, they wanted to make medicine taste disgusting, so that it sort of feels as if it's doing something. And I don't know if that is true now, but I kind of get the sense that we still have a little bit of that in us, of that. If you drink something that's really harsh, you kind of think that it's helping you more.
Oh yeah, or like running. It's like I'll or exercising, like you're like no, they're definitely or just doing something really difficult. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because like if medicine tastes really good, you almost psychologically you think it's not really medicine.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Although then, what about what is it? Flintstones chewable morphine.
Chewable morphine.
I mean chewable tablets. Sorry.
Wait, does Flintstones do a morphine too? They do vitamins and morphine.
No wonder today's
the two products.
Yeah, no wonder today's kids seem so just out of it. The vitamins.
You go to the hospital, you're like, could I please get the Flintstone morphine? I'll take a Dino, please.
Yeah, no, I was trying to think. There was a Flintstone, or there was a Simpsons episode that it was like that I have in my head because it repeated Bart asking his mom to get him Flintstones chewable tablets or whatever, but there's a word. It's not morphine, but it's something like morphine. I can't remember what it was. Anyway,
multivitamin?
Might have been multivitamin. I don't know.
I think anyway. I think you should be a little careful.
Yeah, I know that was an accident
in your life.
That was an accident.
That you don't mix those things up.
Yeah. Maybe they should make them though. I don't know. Man. What was I talking about before that? I was just making a joke anyway about how that tastes. Those taste good and they're good for you, Mantushka.
Yes.
So there goes your theory. That's all I'm saying. Are they good?
Yeah. Well, there goes my theory.
Just
out the window.
Yeah, pretty much just exploded that. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah. Check
with rock solid, not only diction but also logic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you said you had a few bones.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's more of just, I did feel like they just simplified things. So, like, an example would be sort of their flippancy with, like, indicating that rituals were either not used or not considered important enough to take up limited space on the tablet. It's like, okay, well, there could have been other reasons, like maybe they haven't translated that tablet yet, that kind of stuff, So there is, but I get it. But that's sort of my bone with this is that I feel like they get into really interesting things and then they stop. So like, but I get it. They have it's a 500-page book already or whatever, 400 pages, and they're trying to basically cover quite a bit. But yeah, I had mentioned that so eventually they get onto the Greeks,
right?
And it's just interesting. They talk about Empedocles, who was the guy that invented basically or came up with, or at least is attributed, I should say, with the 4-element theory of matter. The idea that you have fire, air, water, and what am I missing? Earth.
Right.
And then it just sort of talks about how and he has this great, and they hold him up as this sort of paragon of logic because he comes up with this experiment to kind of show that air actually has mass by showing that if you push down something like a cup, water isn't going to flow into the cup, but if you poke a hole into the cup, then water will flow in because air has left. So it's a very cogent experiment in a way.
Yeah.
And then it ends with Empedocles decided to declare himself a god and threw himself into a volcano to convince his followers of his divinity. It's just funny, And so anyway, but it would have been kind of.
Do you think he had an oh shit moment? Maybe this was not a good idea.
Yeah, no, I don't know. No, but so it's that kind of like they were getting at an interesting point there, right? It's like given such a fine demonstration of logic and what we know of his democratic beliefs, it is all the more curious that this is what he ended up doing. And I get it. It's not supposed to be about this guy, but I think I would have liked a little bit less of the anthology and maybe a little bit more of a narrative, if you will.
Oh,
God
yeah.
forbid.
Yeah. How did he get to the mental state of ready to throw himself into a volcano?
No, I mean more of even just connecting, trying to look for some kind of connection between all of these guys, which they kind of do.
Right.
As now, it feels a little bit more just like, here's a thing, here's a thing, here's a thing, here's a thing.
I mean, I definitely got the sense for that from the whole chapter of just like, here's a thing, just like you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But again, I understand that was sort of their point, and if that's how they want to write a book, that's fine. I obviously still like the book because I read it, for no reason. I don't know why I read it. But yeah, and I don't know. I'm sure if we keep going, other stuff. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but other stuff will come. Yeah. It was also just like there's a lot of examples that I thought were interesting. Kind of getting back to our whole. I guess you could say we have a little bit of a theme ourselves in our podcast of, I guess you could say, rebelism. I don't know, or renegadeism.
Sure.
And so I thought it was also kind of interesting as they get. So basically they talk about all the pre-civilization stuff, and then they slowly move into Greece, where, of course, you had much of what the West is at least founded upon. A lot of the thoughts came out of that. We know Socrates, Plato, etc. And so interesting examples of also how the philosophers really were sort of renegades in themselves too. And like Plato, Plato was descended from a very highfalutin family, actually, whatever, a distinguished family, I should say.
Right.
And I'm in a mood today, Andrushka. And he could have gone into politics, but he sort of saw corruption and stuff like that and decided to go into philosophy. And it's just, imagine if Plato had gone into politics. I mean, it's just like this kind of idea of like, if you potentially living a truthful life is better than sort of just living, just the life that maybe will come easy.
The unexamined life.
Exactly.
Not worth living, man.
Oh, man. Quiet desperation, man.
Wait, did you ever see that old Dimitri Martin thing? He had a whole like a stand-up special from way back, like 2003.
Yeah, I never got into him. I never got into him too much.
Yeah, I think I remember that. But yeah, it was all based on the unexamined life is not worth living, and he said the only thing that would make it better is if you added man at the end.
Oh yeah,
because then it really hits here,
Yeah, it's like then you really feel like you're in a basement talking with your friends.
The unexamined life is not worth living, man.
That's funny.
Yeah. An interesting point I thought when they're introducing the Greek philosophers, it made me just think of modern universities and how it's another sort of tie all the way back. It says, when the collection of chemical facts continued to be enlarged by the artisan, these facts were interpreted by the philosophers, who also served as mathematicians, astronomers, anatomists, and physicists, as well as theologians and political theoreticians. In fact, not until the 1800s did European scientists begin to think of their work as separate from that of philosophers. And what's interesting is the highest degree you can get still is a PhD. A doctorate in philosophy, just plain old philosophy. Right. And I feel like it's still that tie. Our universities are so old, such old traditions. It's so goofy when you go to a graduation. Everybody puts on their old the medieval garb.
Yeah, we should be wearing togas, really, when you think about it.
Right. Go further back.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Yeah, well, and this has always been, there's a great Jethro Tull line from Thick as a Brick. The doer and the thinker, no allowance for the other. And I do feel like it's always sort of been that, is you always have a little bit of friction between the people sort of doing things and the people just thinking about things. And you could say the thinkers are sort of, I'm not saying that academics don't do things. There are plenty of academics that are doing things, but there's a lot because of the comforts that academia allows you, like tenure and everything, you are given this license to just kind of think.
Right.
But you have to be careful with that because it's easy to get caught up in your own mentations and then fall in love with them. God knows I do. I love my mentations. I'm using the word mentations. Why don't I just
I don't know
use
if I've
thought?
ever heard that word before.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me go back up into my tower for a second. I'll go come up with another word to use. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't know, man. You know, man, you know what I'm talking about, man.
Wow, you came down from the tower pretty quick there.
Hey, man. Yeah, I know. I can't stay up there too long. It's hard to breathe. I think that's a good point. And actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking about one of the bones that I had to pick. It reminded me.
Oh, nice.
When it's talking about, because when it goes into the Greeks and sort of actually to contradict myself, one of the threads it was tying with the Greeks was this idea that they're all sort of trying to formulate a central theory of matter, right? That was one of the things that they were emphasizing because trying to, and a lot of it was saying that like there were these fundamental parts, and so that's where the four element theory came from. And then it talks about Democritus, who had the theory of atoms, and it was talking about like let's see where, when it was talking about I think it was Anaxagoras, right? So Anaxagoras was another philosopher who predated Socrates, I believe, just a little bit. And he was basically coming up with the identity of the primal substances, with the assumption that whatever it was, this primal element or elements would be found in some portion of all matter. And so basically what he's saying is that there's one fundamental element and it can sort of create all elements, or at least that's what I was taking it. The identity.
Right.
Yeah, they're talking about a primal substance. And then it was saying, one reason for its persistence, this idea that there's just one fundamental substance, was the intuitive appeal of arguments offered by philosophers. And I just felt like they were trying to say as if we aren't still sort of thinking that the universe is made of one fundamental substance. And I think there would be physicists that might believe that. I mean, it's like when you break down reality and matter enough, it does seem to be that we're still sort of getting at just a fundamental thing, and you break,
I mean, from
the
even
Higgs
the way
boson,
that
I don't even know enough about particle physics, but I guess we haven't. I guess in a sense,
I also don't know enough about particles.
Yeah, I know. Dang it, we're out of our element here, Antushka. I guess it's not true, but I guess maybe it's just how I conceive the universe.
I think it's a conceptualization, though, because what I was thinking about just now was the periodic table, and the way it's set up, it almost feels like hydrogen is the fundamental element, and like 2 hydrogens is a helium, and 3 is a lithium. I mean, that's not exactly right, but it's the idea.
But it's the idea that one hydrogen has a proton and a neutron, right? And so. Yeah, but then we have broken the protons and neutrons and electrons.
Right, because if you fuse it together, I mean, it like through nuclear fusion, you would get helium, right?
Right.
So not bonded, not H2, but actually like fusing the atoms together, you actually do end up with helium next.
Exactly,
right?
and thank you. You're basically articulating my point much better than I am, because that's kind of what I was trying to get at, is we still do sort of do this, and that's what fission and fusion is. Right. So we do sort of understand.
That's how we get plutonium.
Right. But I didn't like this book was sort of discussing it as if it isn't true. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I feel like the case isn't settled. It's like we still don't know what the fundamental unit of nature is.
Well, because you can break down hydrogen not into one thing, but into 3 things.
Right, and this is what my point was like,
the Holy Trinity.
Because I mean, I had to take it in, like, we went into particle physics a very little bit in the physics class I took in college, but it's like, it's all been forgotten now. But yeah, you can go into positrons, and then you can break those even into more. And and whatnot. And I'm sure they're doing all sorts of stuff over in CERN.
Right. It's turtles all the way down.
Right. And so the point is, for all we know, we might get to a fundamental unit. And that might explain how that you can package a hydrogen into a helium, right? 2 hydrogen into a helium atom and whatnot.
Right.
And so yeah. Anyway, so that was one of my bones, Antushka.
Yeah. I wonder if there's not. I have a suspicion. And this
You're a
is my
xeno. You're a xenist.
A xenist? I don't even know what that word is.
Well, that was xeno. I was just.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I see what you mean.
Because he was saying matter's continuous, basically, that you can't.
Right.
Yeah.
It's closer to a wave or something like that.
Zeno's paradox, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I also believe that I can't get anywhere.
Yeah, you've never left that room.
I can't even get to the door.
I know.
I got to cross the halfway point. Then I got to cross the halfway point to that.
Yeah.
No. My suspicion is that we like the idea of some kind of fundamental building block, but it's unlikely that we're ever actually going to be able to find something quite like that.
Yeah, probably.
Because it's the issue of God or whatever, what created God, what came before God, and I feel like that's why that narrative kind of works, because it's a way out of that, out of the problem of turtles all the way down.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So the story of God is another like fundamental substrate story,
right? Well, it's interesting because there is. I wonder if it is this friction between our mind and reality, because it's like reality tells us that there is a definitive end to like matter. Like we can put our hands on things and our hand doesn't go through like a table and stuff like that. So that does tell us that there are discrete boundaries.
Right.
So we're constantly trying to get that. But then when we try to logic it, as Zeno does, and so what we were talking about, Zeno's paradox, of course, famous, that he made the point that if you try to get out of the room and you take half of that step and half of that step and half of that step,
you're going to have to continually cross the halfway point to each thing.
Right.
And so you'll never get out of the room.
Yes. So we obviously know that's not true, but logically that makes sense. It's like, yeah.
Right.
And so I guess that's the point is, so I kind of agree with you, because I think it's whenever you like break something down enough, and I guess you could say Gödel, however you pronounce it, Gödel's theorem, he sort of did this with algebra. Is like our mental systems always come up with, there's always a paradox in it, Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I look at that kind of stuff, though, I guess, is that, maybe that's the fundamental paradox to our system, is that we'll constantly, is the turtles all the way down.
Right. I think the idea of infinity is an attempt at solving it. I remember I listened to a series of lectures on the history of math at one point, and they were talking about the history of calculus. And they brought up Zeno's paradox, and they said, it wasn't until calculus was invented that there's an answer to this problem, and the answer is instantaneous motion, that we actually are always in motion. And so you don't have to deal with the discrete points, because all the points are a continuous wave kind of a thing. Anyway, I don't even know if that's a great answer.
I like that, actually. I think that is a good answer. I like that.
It's a good answer, but to me it's another conceptualization. I think we are experiencing motion, and then we're just doing our best to try and model it mathematically, which is very, very difficult.
Yeah, because essentially what you're saying with calculus and the tangent lines that are the derivative is that it's like we're going in this direction, so we know, like, we're at this rate or whatever, and based off of the slope. But I don't know. I like that. I don't know. But I also, it's funny because I've even written a song about it, Antushka, about how it's like tangent lines have no meaning, because it's like fundamentally they are, like you said, they're this conception that we've sort of, it's like a cheat code almost.
Right.
Yeah. Although very
because to me there's something a little weird. Like, to me the fact that I can walk through the door is not because the whole universe is moving and I'm moving infinitely. It's like that's a way of dealing with a math problem, maybe. but there's something happening that is probably difficult to explain with math. It's actually kind of similar to what we were talking about a few episodes back about frequencies. And like, I don't see a symphony as just a series of frequencies necessarily. There's a whole context to those frequencies. And like, if you had sine wave generators playing those same frequencies, it wouldn't be the same experience at all. Like, there's a whole thing. Like, part of it's going to the concert hall. Part of it's the sound of a clarinet and like this, and the specific frequency spectrum of the clarinet and the cello, and then you play them together, and then you get like super, super complex frequency spectrums. And then you also get added on top of that the context of music theory, where we're associating fives and ones and things like that, which is like a higher order metaphor or something like that.
Yeah, no, and yeah, and then we were talking about how you're bringing a bunch of context to it.
Right, and so what I'm saying is, walking is like, it's an experience that we have. It's a thing that we do. So there's this sort of like the empirical, we do walk. We know we walk because we feel it. We feel the floor. We get through the door. At least unless we're like imagining all of it. And then the idea that, you know, a derivative is explaining walking in any real way feels silly to me. Not that I think a derivative is silly. No, I think that calculus is very useful, just to be clear.
Antushka, yeah, you better clarify. Those mathematicians are going to come after you. They're the most cutthroat of them all. We're going to get canceled.
That would be amazing. Actually, I kind of would love that.
Yeah.
We got canceled by mathematicians.
Yeah. Yeah. Be like, who invented it? Newton or Leibniz? Answer now, Antushka. It's like, I don't know. Both. Oh, what? Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of, because as you're saying it, I'm trying to think about also just, I like the experience idea. I like that. And how, you know, sort of moving is taking more things into context. So that's essentially what you're saying, right? Is it's not just as simple as just you walking there. Well, yeah, can you explain that again a little bit more directly, the analogy?
Right, well, so like Zenu's paradox, it's one of those things that rationally the rationalist mind, right, it makes sense. The paradox makes sense.
Right. Which we discussed, yeah.
Right. But of course, you do get through the door. So there's this thing where it's ridiculous in a sense. Mm-hmm. And so there's also something to me ridiculous about then needing to remain so much you're having a problem in the rational space. And so you need to fix the rational space. Mm-hmm. You need to rig it so that you don't encounter that problem in the rational space.
Yeah. I think
what I'm saying is it's ridiculous to fix something that's obviously ridiculous. Like, obviously Zenu's paradox is wrong. Mm-hmm. So you don't need to fix it. You don't need to address it necessarily. You could say, obviously that's the wrong way of thinking. Let's do something else.
Right. Well, and as you were saying that, again, it was kind of making me think, although I don't know if this is exactly what you're getting at, how you are basically setting a reference. That's what calculus is doing, is like you're sort of making a reference with the limit. You're giving yourself a point to subtract where you are from with where you think the limit of the function is. Right. And then you can get somewhere by setting these parameters. Because that's really what you're doing is Zeno is almost nowhere if you're nowhere if you're not relative to somewhere, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so calculus works because you make yourself relative to somewhere so you can figure out where you're going.
Right.
And
Sorry.
Does that make any sense? And you're making yourself relative to whatever the limit of the function is, and then you can tell where you are in that scale. I don't know. I think
sure. The way that I think about it is that what calculus allows you to take into account rationally is the fact that motion is a continuous process.
It's relative. Motion is relative. I think that's really more of the idea. It's like you can't be going anywhere unless you're relative to something. It's like you're not
sure.
moving
Yes.
unless
Yes.
you're relative to something.
Right. But Xenos is relative to something too.
Yeah, it is.
But he's dealing with discrete steps. It's you have this step and you have this step. And I think what calculus is saying is like, no, that's all part of a process. It's like the integral. It's the other side, the flip of the derivative.
Mm-hmm.
It's not where is it approaching. It's what is the
sum of
totality
parts.
of all the points.
Yeah, but see, I think we're missing something here, but I'm not good enough at thinking on my feet. I'm going to listen back at it.
I'm sure we're missing something.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure, back to
I'm sure that those mathematicians that are about to cancel us are like, these
you
people
idiots.
are morons.
No, but because
You
I do
idiot.
think... I do think there's something about Xenos that he's not relative to the right thing, if that makes sense.
Right.
He's not
I
on the
remember
right
in the
scale.
lectures that I listened to, they said that the answer to Zeno's paradox is instantaneous motion.
Yeah. No, when you said that actually made a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, anyway, I feel like we've probably beaten this horse too much.
Yes.
But anyway.
You're welcome, mathematicians. I hope you learned something.
Yeah. Jeez.
Jeez.
Okay. Man. Yeah.
All right. So what are we going to do next? Do we have another
I don't
chapter
know.
we
Well,
wanna do?
I think there was one last thing I wanted to
nice.
mention. Well, yeah, we didn't even talk about glass.
It wasn't that
Yeah.
big of a section. It's like one.
No. But it is cool. You know, how just glass is interesting and pretty.
Ooh.
Oh, and, here's another thing of like, we think about Aristotle's influence, and it's like, it makes an interesting point whether Aristotle would have been as influential had he not been the tutor of, Alexander the Great.
Sure.
It sort of reminds you how, I guess you could say, random the things that we remember kind of are in a
Sure.
sense. It's like, I don't know, though. I guess somebody might make the point, well, if it weren't Aristotle, somebody would have gotten those, some conqueror would have sort of gotten the precepts of Aristotle somehow.
Maybe.
But I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either. I think also it illustrates the importance of naming your children something the great.
Yeah, no, they really set him up for that. Though he did die at like 32.
Okay. Well, that happens to a lot of greats.
Yeah, I know. Hopefully not me. Oh, I guess I'm not great. So there it is. Thank God. Because I'm almost there,
like
man.
the satisfactory.
Yeah, the good enough.
Good enough.
That's a little inside joke right there.
Oh man, nobody's gonna get that at all. Well,
Nobody.
maybe Javier's listening.
You name dropped them.
Yeah. Well, how many Javiers are there?
There's enough. Yeah,
There's enough.
Yeah,
There's
that's
enough.
a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to keep with this?
Yeah.
It's up to
keep
you.
at it.
Okay. Maybe we skip ahead.
Well, because the thing is now that we've done 3 chapters of 2 other books, now like I have it's like an Aspie thing or an OCD thing. Like I want to keep it up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I did want to talk about the nuclear one at one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I know. We could do.
Whoa, I don't even know what a lot of these words are.
Yeah.
Buckminster Fullerene?
Oh, you don't know Buckminster? Buck.
No, I don't know.
Buckminster Fuller. Yeah. No, I actually know because he was an architect, so I know.
I see.
He did that. Yeah, he had that dome or whatever, geodesic dome.
Oh, okay, cool.
And he came up with the buckyball, I think. It's just like a shape. I think that was him.
Oh, okay.
Now I have to look that up. Which I think they found in like Nature.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Buckminster fullerene is a type of fullerene with the formula C60.
I don't know what fullerene is.
So it's basically a carbon molecule with 60 carbons that you can, Google it, and it makes up this sphere.
Okay.
Eventually. Yeah. And it's named after him because I think he conceived the structure before they found it or something. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway.
So the alchemy thing could be interesting. Evolution of European alchemy, or
I do like alchemy.
Alchemy translates from east to west.
I have more books on alchemy than I'd like to admit.
Well, how many? Wait. How many would you like to admit?
Well, let's just say I have 3 books.
Okay, he has 24 books on alchemy.
I'm not trying to make gold, okay? Yeah, Philosopher's Stone.
I'm not trying to make gold.
Yeah. Yeah, I see all these commercials. They'll be like, buy gold. I'm like, the joke's on you guys. I'll just make it. Yeah, I don't know. Because I find all the European stuff interesting, but I do feel like we maybe have been talking about European history too much.
Okay. What about thermodynamics?
Oh, that's pretty interesting. No, but I was saying, like, should we do like the from Rome
I think
to
thermodynamics
Baghdad?
is interesting because there's that whole thing where it like predicts the end of the universe or whatever.
Yeah, entropy, man.
Yeah,
Entropy, man.
Right. That's a good title, Entropy.
Well, that's jumping quite far, though. The question is, we want to do anything in between there?
Yeah.
Before we get to that, we don't have to, but I think they do talk about Hildegard of Bingen. You like her?
Oh, we do.
You like Hildegard. I know you do. Yeah, I know you like Hildegard. Don't think I haven't
all
forgotten.
Those college days, all those stuff you caught me doing.
I say all this respectfully, of course. Hildegard was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do they talk about Hildegard?
I assume they do because she's important about for like she did some chemical stuff.
So would it be the 1300 to 1500?
It would be. I think she was like 1100s even maybe.
Yes, I
don't
think
remember.
Right. Yep. So somewhere in that Europe alchemy stuff.
Yeah. Maybe they don't talk about her. They should have.
It would be funny if you just made that up to get me to want to read that chapter.
We could talk about the empirists. I mean, honestly, the 1000 to 1200 might be interesting.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because then it talks about the empiricists and everything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Although the disasters of the 1300s, that's going to be talking about the Black Death and everything.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's pretty sexy.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to do that. We're going to do...
Yeah, let's do it.
Chapter...
4.
4? Okay.
Or 5. You pick.
4 or 5. I pick. Let's do 4.
Okay. Sounds good.
Regret this. I'm already regretting
four
this.
also has alcohol in it. That's a sexy topic.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe we should try to do 2 chapters though.
Okay, we'll see. If I might or might not be.
Yeah. We can. I'll also try, and then we'll.
Yes.
Actually, Periclesis might be important to talk about though, because he was sort of like very important, and then he, it's another one of those people that was like really influential, and then people realized that he was wrong about a lot of things.
Nice.
But yeah, okay. So we'll do it 4 and maybe 5.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool.
I like this heading, the question of combustion.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting at with phlogiston.
Right.
That's where and actually that would be also good to talk about in the ether. So there's like a few.
Really, we should do this whole book.
Yeah, I think we should just do the whole book. So you'll read the whole book for next time, and I won't.
I will.
I'll ask you questions about it. That'll be how it goes. Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Anything else?
I don't know.
You didn't ask me how my week was.
Oh, how was your week? Tell me.
It's actually kind of stressful.
What happened?
No, it's fine. It's just I have to give a presentation in a few weeks, so getting all my data together for that is kind of stressful. Get it together in time, but it's okay. Right. I didn't have any bad gigs, though. I didn't have any gigs.
Oh, bummer.
That's the thing is I feel like you could be much more forthright about, or maybe, I don't know, or at least you just don't care as much about discussing all these things. I guess I'm trying to be more closed lip and enigmatic.
Well, I feel like your things are higher stake. I think somebody here in Austin told me this, but I think it's true that any one gig, especially at this stage in my and like most of our careers, it's like there's no stakes really.
You don't think so? It all adds up, like, though. Obviously,
it really depends. I think when you're talking about 3-hour bar gigs around town, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I feel like the worst that's going to happen is you're not going to get called back there.
Mm-hmm. How long? And you've got like a regular thing at this thing on Sunday, right? You said.
Yeah. This place.
Yeah.
The drafting room.
Oh, shout out.
Shout out drafting room.
Yeah, everybody should go there.
I bet they're listening.
They probably, yeah. Well, then they're going to listen in here and be like, yeah, man, you should up your, make your set better. And get well, so you must be playing with other musicians, though, right?
Yeah, it's a full band gig. Yeah.
And you play with these people a lot, then?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they up for changing the set?
Yeah, I mean, they'll do it. I'm just paying them, so they'll play whatever I send them.
You're the leader.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I could feel like making love. And the funny thing is, like, they wouldn't bat an eye. They'd be like, okay, it's fine. Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah. Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
What's your presentation on?
I don't want to say.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying not to be too specific.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I know.
Okay.
This is like the opposite of what you're supposed to do.
All right, well, here, all the listeners don't get to. We'll do the podcast thing. Oh, we'll talk about it off air.
Yeah, dude. No, I mean, this is the question is like, podcast is supposed to be, you're supposed to bare your soul, you know?
Well, actually, I just had a funny encounter last night. I was at the Blues Jam after my gig, and a guy who listened to a podcast I did, the Reckless Muse podcast. I was just a guest on their podcast a couple weeks ago. We were talking about radical black ideologies, and he heard that, and he was like, "Oh, I'm interested." And then he listened to it, and he's like, "I don't think I like this podcast."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was kind of pissed off about what we were talking about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't even know if I want to ask about it. I'll be honest, Antushka. You put me in a bit of
Let's go back to the renegade history.
Yeah, jeez. This was just like a guy that came to the show?
Oh, no, he's a bass player around town.
Oh, a bass player.
He saw the post on Instagram and then listened to the podcast.
Well, I mean, yeah, so what do you think? How do you feel about that? I guess you probably
I think it's a good thing, essentially. I think it's good. I think it's good to say what you think in a courageous way, and I think it's good for people to say if they disagree or they don't like it. I think it's all kosher. It's all good. Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree with you to an extent too, and I mean, it is a bit of a cowardice move on me to sort of be as.
I think that there's also times to be smart about it, though. I don't think that you should just always say everything that's on your mind all the time.
Yeah. No, and that was actually the thing. We were talking about the interview I watched of me on the Breakfast Club, which is very entertaining. And I had never really listened to him before, actually. Mm-hmm. I think this was actually the first interview I'd ever heard with him. So I didn't really know a lot of his theories, but one of them that I actually kind of thought was interesting was because he was being asked about like affirmative action and service and stuff like that. And he was saying how like he is not he basically admitted that the volunteer stuff he did in high school was to get into college, like all the like extracurricular stuff. And he was saying how he's being very honest about it because he feels like we should be more open about the things that we sort of say behind closed doors in a public forum, because this is how many people operate, right? Especially the people that get into the best schools are being very calculated about it. And you could even say Machiavellian. I mean, it's just, dare I. But, it's just the idea that there is a lot more cunning. I mean, you have to be cunning in a way to get into these top schools.
I think there's another thing there. This is like off the topic of the podcast for the day. But I think that there's another aspect of we don't need to denigrate doing good things for personal gain. Like donating to charities isn't bad if you're doing it and getting a tax write-off.
Right. Well,
it's not a bad thing, and it's not a bad thing to volunteer at a soup kitchen and then also use that as leverage for something else because you did something good, and that's great.
Right.
And so you should be rewarded, and it's fine. Like there's no problem there.
Well, and that was essentially because he sort of used that as a jumping off point to talk about capitalism. He didn't make the analogy as direct as I thought, but that's essentially what capitalism is it's like benefits, outer benefits that come from being sort of very sort of self-interested and trying to, make it, I guess, in the sense of capitalism, obviously getting the most money, but that's self-interested. And then it has blossomed a bunch of other stuff, which we can debate about, obviously. a bit of bad stuff as well, I will admit.
The death of late stage capitalism.
I know. But I agree with that. And I that was sort of where my mind went as well, and essentially where his did too, is like, it's like not everything that's self-interested is inherently bad. I actually got into I remember getting into a debate with my about how, I still kind of feel this way, about how there's really no inherently selfless action.
Oh, yeah. Mises opens up his book,
God.
Human Action.
Am I a libertarian? Dang it!
God. That's the Mises' basis for libertarian ideology.
Yeah, okay.
That's the groundwork, that there's no such thing as an altruistic.
This is 16-year-old me just coming up with this without thinking about any of that. Yeah. But it's just like even altruism is like you get a good feeling out of that, whatever the dopamine hit. And again, it's not to say that that's bad, but I remember it did not make her feel very good. She did not like that.
No, that's a weird one to me. People really cling to the idea that you can do acts that don't benefit you at all. And then, like, to me, that's very weird. And I almost think you shouldn't do acts that don't benefit you at all. Like, I think that might be a bad thing to do.
You want to expand on that? We don't have to. I mean, we're getting, but like,
Yeah. So it's like what you're talking about. So you go volunteer at a soup kitchen. Either you're doing it so that you get into college or you get a job, or you're doing it because you want to help people. So you're doing something that you believe to be a good thing. So you are benefiting, by feeding your soul with acts of goodness or something like that. If you do an act that you actually derive no benefit from whatsoever, meaning you don't even think it's a good thing to do, that's like madness to me. To me, that's close to evil.
Well, I guess the question is does anybody ever do that?
Not really. I mean, I would say not really. And if you do, that's where I'm saying that's kind of madness. Like that's a very strange thing to do.
Right. Yeah, because I feel like with altruism, people always use like the example of like uncles in monkey habitats and stuff will take care of like kids that aren't theirs or something like that, Right. And it's, for me, it's like,
but they want to. They're doing something that they want to do.
Exactly. And again, even if you could make the point that it's like, I didn't even know what point, but it's just the idea that, you could even attribute the dopamine hit as the reason that they're doing it. And, you know, yeah.
But people don't like that. That one, it surprises me how upset that one makes people.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
You're like, wow,
Yeah, dude.
this is going a lot worse than I thought.
And now I think I know. It's because it's like, well, I come out there and you're like, yeah, Mises. I mean, he's you and him see eye to eye on more than you think. It's like, oh, crap. No, it's fine. It's fine. I've tried to read Mises, and
it's tough.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. I think we did it.
I think we did too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Till next time.
Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.